tell you about some stuff that's been going on here at the church the last couple of days. We had a young couple wander up looking for a homeless shelter, age 19 and 20. To kind of make the long story as short as I can possibly make it, not once did they ever ask a dime of anything or for anything. They said, "We're looking for a shelter. Can you point us towards one?" And we were like, "Well, there's no shelters around here." Second question was, "What about a food pantry?" And I was like, "Well, it just so happens that I got one of those." So Miss Judy hooked her up and got her situated and got this couple situated. Again, they are living from an abandoned place to abandoned place to abandoned place, trying to take care of each other. The interesting thing to me was, I don't think I'm telling any secrets, but Robin and Danny, your class has been in the process of getting together little kits that they can give out to homeless people when they see them and meet them and help them with a need. To me, I sort of looked at all of this as like, that might be a test of God going, is this something you want to play at, or are you committed to helping this whenever it comes up? And then, so long story short, that Sunday school class has gotten together a lot of socks, a lot of underwear, toiletries, things that they might need. And again, Sandy Cheeves and I drove them to Griffin yesterday and got them a place to stay for a couple of nights, and they had their stuff in an abandoned house over here behind the church right over here, and they had like a tote, sharing a pair of shoes when the guy goes to work. So a couple church members hooked them up with some shoes. So I'm going to take all that over there to the hotel tonight and give that to them after church. And then I'm going to see and just ask some questions and see if they'll allow us to maybe help them get set up with getting certain things needed for assistance publicly. So we'll kind of just see how that goes. Really felt for them. Of course, you know, when you have a 20-year-old male and a 19-year-old girl in front of you and they're homeless, and I just kept seeing my children's faces, and I thought, man, I cannot just say, no, there's no shelter, we got you some food, hope you make it tonight. I'm like, we're going to at least get them a place to stay. Our conscience, my conscience, the church's conscience, you know, we've done what we were required to do, but this really might be a couple that, you know, through some of Fred's connections and some other people, we may be able to try to actually be able to help get them back on their feet if they want it. So their first names are Cameron and Madison. Yet another reason why it kind of stuck with me, like, sure, you're tugging at my heartstrings already, and then you're going to tell me her name is Madison? And I mean, I would do an awful lot of things for my son. But at some point with my son, I'd probably say, dude, you're a man now, figure it out. My daughter, she can be old as she wants to, and I'll do everything and anything. So, yeah. Yep. Well, she's pretty tiny. I've got shoe sizes from them, and again, being homeless, if we overwhelm them with stuff, they have no way to get that from place to place. So we asked that Sunday school class, we've got him a pair of work boots. He's in construction and working every day. So we got him work boots. We got her a pair of boots, a jacket for each, and like underwear, socks, the stuff that you probably are not washing if you're homeless, and toiletries. The biggest need really is a place to stay until they can store up some money. I did verify that there is actually the people that he says he's working for, he's actually working for. So I am able to kind of hopefully get them to the next level of things. So obviously the biggest help they could find would be if somebody like had some kind of farm and needed work on their farm. I mean, but I don't know. I haven't verified that much yet to say I trust them at somebody's house. That's what I'm going to kind of try to do right after church tonight, because we were able to raise some gift cards and some stuff, and I'm going to take them over there to the hotel. So try to talk to them a little more, so pray for me. I did share the gospel with them. she assured me she knew Jesus, and it was at one point involved in church. So we had that opportunity with them, and man, it's just tough to imagine kids, in an abandoned building. So we're just trying to see what we can do, and if this is the end of what we can do, then it's the end of what we can do. And if they want to be helped further, we'll help them further. Yep, could be. I mean, I don't know. Seem like super nice people to me. And like I said, when you're in my position, you get hit up for help daily almost. And you've learned generally if there's a story, it's probably fake, And some people won't help until you tell them, hey, I'll pay this bill. They want the cash. And not once did they ever ask for a dime. And in fact, before we took them to the hotel for the night, I said, hey, have y'all eaten today? Oh, no, we're good. Our boss took us to a Chinese buffet on the way home. And I had noticed they had been eating on some fortune cookies when they were sitting in my office and just guzzling water that we were providing them. So, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she was telling me they were hungry, and then I'm asking them, can I take you to get something? Oh, no, we're really good. And the way they lit up when I said hotel for the night, it was something different, y'all. It was, again, I might go over to the hotel tonight, and they may be nowhere to be found. I don't know. But we're going to find out and see. So pray for Cameron and Madison. All right, any others y'all need me to add to the list or any updates or anything?
Keep praying for Mr. Butch.
How's he coming?
He's still got the crud.
Do we need to send him to a sweat lodge?
I'm gonna send him somewhere if you don't hurry me get back.
Find him a sweat lodge. Okay. And that was the one that was down the street here at Life Springs? Okay, good. Glad to hear that.
Please put Kevin Davis back on there and use Kevin pop off again.
All right, we'll put him back on there.
Put Jason Ward on there.
Okay.
Heinekens' son. We're going to Nashville, Tennessee next Thursday for him to have surgery.
Okay. If there's anything we can do to help, just let us know.
I've got an update. Under military personnel, that my grandson, William Weston,
Mm-hmm.
discharged from the Navy last week. However, you can add his wife, he got married, and she's still in the Navy. Zoe Weston.
Okay. I'll just replace William with Zoe.
There you go.
And we'll pray for both of them. Or I might put Mr. and Mrs. William Weston.
You can scratch USS Russell, she's not on the Russell. I don't even know the name of the ship.
All right, for sure. That's awesome. How is your wife doing?
She's pretty good. She's kind of on the weak side lately, but she's doing pretty good.
Okay. I think Carrie's okay with this. She went and see her specialist yesterday. Went fine. She was disappointed that she only spent 5 minutes with her, but y'all know that's just how it is with specialists. You're not paying them for their time. You're paying them for what they know. She did her blood work fine. They said it was one stick and the blood came out. So that's a big prayer request. We then went back today to her regular doctor who said there are no more traces of pneumonia in you this time. We obviously are still waiting for the blood test to come back to make sure the MRSA is gone from her system, but there's a pretty fair chance it actually is. So, but the specialist is a rheumatoid arthritic specialist. I don't know what the fancy term for that is necessarily, but anyway, she said, yeah, your numbers are off the chart, and you were probably having a major uptick in it that weekend that you ended up with pneumonia and all that, and that's what made everything so complicated and so hard. And she did tell Carrie, she said, you were lucky to get to the hospital when you did. I'm glad you didn't wait. So So we go back in January for the follow-up of that to see what they want to do to treat the arthritis part. So until then, they got her on some prescriptions for some things and some vitamins, but takes a while.
I'm gonna send you some information on this thing called Plexus. A friend of ours, from the church we went to before here, she had RA so bad she couldn't even get out of the chair most days.
Okay.
And she started using Plexus and all of those things, and I think she did something else. I'll have to send you her contact information too. She's a super nice lady. Anyways, she's up, she runs around outside with her kids now and her grandchildren, and she said she has flare-ups every once in a while, but for the most part, she's like a whole new woman again.
That'd be great, yeah. That's what we're just trying to get to with Carrie, however we can, is get to where she feels like she's alive,
Yeah.
And going, so.
Danny and I have a praise and a prayer request. It's kind of an all-in-one.
Okay.
The praise goes right along with it. We found out today that the situation Oliver was in was a lot worse than we realized. We found more information out about kind of like from the police and things like that and everything. Oliver really could have been hurt, and he wasn't. And so that's a huge praise. He came home safely, him and his stepsister.
Good.
Yeah. The wife was not so lucky from what we learned. So it really could have been a lot worse for the kids. The prayer request is we have an emergency hearing in 30 days, a little under 30 days. And so Danny and I are just kind of praying that that goes in a way of that'll be best for Oliver.
Okay.
We're not asking for anything specific, but we're just going to trust God's protected Oliver this far and done what's right for Oliver, and that's all we want to happen going forward. So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah, just getting to talk to him, that kid's tough.
He's trying.
He's
Slept in his bed for the first time last night.
Okay, good.
On his own, yeah. He said he had one nightmare, but he didn't get up and come get us. He went back to sleep. So he's thinking about whether he wants to continue to talk to someone. He's having a hard time getting the thoughts out of his head. So he's using the journal and he's wrote stuff down and everything.
Oh, good.
But he did sleep by himself for the first time since then, and that's really good.
Well, I know somebody good he can talk to. So.
Really? Frederick?
I just gave you a referral. Sorry.
He wants his referral fee.
I'll take a fee later when you can take me and get me an ice cream or something. Or you can try to figure my brain out. I don't know. One of the two. That's good luck. That's a good luck. Well, great. We'll be praying. Y'all be praying for Oliver and everything. So, all right. Anybody else?
Take Ray Gunn off. He was supposed to come on Wednesday.
Yeah, Ray Dunn, he's healed.
Okay. Was he on there twice before and I took him off of one place and not the other? Okay. My bad.
Down there under continuing request, you can take off Neil Perkins, he's doing all right for now.
Okay. Keep Bobby on there. Yep. Knew that.
And add Tom and Lil Lackey, Lackey. That is son and brother, our friends in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them, her cancer's come back for the third time, and her son, has lymphoma,
Okay.
and he has no insurance.
I know that feeling. I did text with Becky and Ronnie Wilson today, and she said he is doing exceptionally well, and they're trying to transfer him to a rehab facility where he'll need to be for 20 days and get him back in shape with PT and OT therapy, and then he'll get to come home. She said, praise the Lord, we're continuing to pray everything goes well, and we know that with God's help we'll get there. Thank you, church, for all the prayers. Brad, I don't know, Brad, are you here tonight? Brad Leonard's here tonight? No. Brad, our deacon, has been such a blessing to us, texting me every other day to see if we need anything. We have such a great church family. So that's a point for the deacons, I guess. So Brad wanted me to plug to his wife that he needed a new tractor. So maybe I will call Katie and tell her that he needs a new tractor. So. Yeah, I'll bribe somebody. I don't care. All right, anything else? Anybody else? Yay, nay? All right, well, let's go to the Lord in prayer, and then Miss Judy is going to join me up here, and we're going to do Bible study. So, yeah, you did. Father, we thank you tonight for your wonderful mercies upon all of us, and God, there are so many situations that we could be in, so many places we could be, that it not for the grace of God that we made one or two different decisions. So God, Lord, I thank you for challenging our church in many ways, and Lord, I thank you for blessing our church in many ways. And God, tonight we've got a lot of folks on this list of folks that are just not feeling well, to people that are facing surgery, all kind of things happening, even in the family world. And Lord, you know every single name on this page, and you know every single situation. And God, we give you the honor and the glory and the availability to say it's out of our hands, it's in your hands. We want you to do the work. And so, God, I just pray tonight that we would just be faithful in what we can do, and we ask it in your name. Amen. All right, for real, Miss Judy, just for a minute. Come on up here. I want you to be in front of everybody so they can see you. Yeah, listen to Fred. He said, come on. I'm going to even give you a microphone so everybody can hear you. Yep. Well, I was going to get it done one way or the other. No, actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to invite Miss Judy up here, number one, because she's a new member. Not everybody knows you super well. And so we're not really going to talk about the food pantry tonight, but what I want to talk about, and we've been talking about some different leadership issues over the last few Wednesdays. And so tonight, the leadership issue that we want to talk about tonight is commitment. And what I want to compare that to is commitment versus a story that I want to read you in a minute that's called The Half-Hearted Climber. All right? The issue is with commitment is one of those things, the more committed you are, the easier it is to do the work. So, I want to kind of go back to the first day I met y'all, right? And y'all had come to visit here for a while. You were talking to us for a while, and y'all decided to join. Right? And she's like, what do you need me to do? Now, that is a pastor's best friend ever. Ask him what he needs you to do. At the time, we were sort of looking for a church secretary, and she's like, hey, I used to be a secretary. Is there some way there I can help? I said, well, Miss Judy, how much do you know about computers, and what do you know about QuickBooks? She's like, nothing. And I'm like, okay, might not be able to help there. She's like, okay, well, what else you need me to do? And I said, well, been praying about starting a food pantry, and I know I can't do everything. And I was like, you have any history with food pantries? And you said,
I don't remember. My best friend was
she said her best friend was the manager of one, but she's like, I ain't never done it before. I said, is that something you think you're interested in? And maybe you pray about it. All right. And so she's like, oh, yeah, I'll think about it and pray about it. And in leadership, there's a 5-step process to commitment. And I'm going to share those with y'all. One of them, the first thing is ideas, where we perceive an issue and the way we think about it, and it involves our minds. That's our first step in sort of this whole commitment deal. Then we get to opinions, where we begin to express our preferences on the issue. So she seemed to be interested and said, well, we thought about it. And she came to me and she said, whatever you need, I'll do it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it. And so then she and I began to talk about ideas, who we wanted to help, how we wanted to help, what were we going to do. And then you came to me with a lot of ideas. Like, one of the things that I thought was really smart is she decided, put the boxes together. Tell us about the boxes of food that we put together. So,
planned them out meals.
yeah.
Instead of just throwing cans of food in there, we planned a meal. Like if they were going to have chili, we put the beans, the tomatoes, the seasoning, everything they needed in there. Spaghetti, they got the noodles, the spaghetti sauce, and all they needed.
Yeah, so
Instead of just junk food throwing in there, we
Right.
planned meals for them.
yeah, so the idea is developing from an idea that you're just thinking about whether or not I want to do the big picture thing to, okay, if I was in charge of this, how would I want to do it? And that's the thing that's important nowadays, I really think, is that when we start something, when we do something, we don't feel like we have to do the cookie cutter based on what worked somewhere else. It's what would work here. And for her and for the ladies that are helping over there, we don't have a massive food pantry where we can say, hey, come in and shop, get what you need. But that gives us an opportunity to know that they've got the staples and a certain amount of it. And we had time to sit and pray with them or talk with them rather than just letting them shop and then leave and then we have nothing left. So So that was sort of that idea phase. Then you get to the belief phase, which is where we conclude where we stand on an issue. Like, we had some questions we had to figure out. Like, we had one lady, tell us about the lady who came twice.
She knew when she signed up the first day that she shouldn't come but once every 30 days. She signed the paper agreeing to that. So when we opened up the Friday evening for other people to be able to have a chance to come get food, she jumped out of her car and come running. And I said, "Ma'am, weren't you here yesterday?" "No, I was not." So I went ahead and to dismiss any conflict with her. We gave her a smaller amount and made sure she understands she's not going to come back in another 10 days and get more.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, we have certain beliefs on it that we want to help people, period.
Right.
And we're not trying to judge people. You know, somebody shows up in a nicer than what we think a needy person's car might be. We don't know, you know, we don't know if they got laid off 2 weeks ago and they have nothing to eat, but they still are hanging on in their car. We don't know what the situation is, but rather than fight it, we just said, okay, we believe in helping people no matter what, but we're also going to be smart about it, which leads us into past our beliefs to commitments. And that's where we begin to act on our belief. Like for you had a decision to make. Like, am I going to tell her no? And there may be some big scene, and all of a sudden we're not in the news for having a food pantry. We're in the news because some lady decided to beat all of us up or something. You know, that was just the thing was. But it involves, when you get to this point, it involves not only your mind or your emotions, but now it's your will. All right? Because now you're going, okay, the first day, y'all, I'm going to tell you, to be honest with you, the first hour we were open, it was car after car coming in here. And then the next 4 hours, it was dead. And we were like, man, like, did we fail at this?
Did we not advertise?
Did we, you know, what's the deal here? And I could kind of sense a little bit of disappointment in you because you've been gearing up for this for like a month, 2 months, just gung-ho about it. And so, you know, then she said, okay, here's the will part of it. Okay, that wasn't good enough. I didn't get it out of my system. We're going to open up Wednesday night or Friday night. And so I'm like, well, shoot, go for it. Whatever you want to do. She's like, maybe we can reach people who had to work during the day or couldn't get here during the day. And so I'm driving to the food pantry, and I'm preparing a speech in my head of, hey, it's going to be all right. It's just the first month. This thing will build. It'll grow. Don't get discouraged. And I pulled up in the parking lot, and the place was packed.
Yep.
And by not getting discouraged and letting it end at mind or emotions, you were able to sort of push past that and say, this is in my will now. You know, and what happens is before we ever get to the last phase, which is convictions, a lot of times we have an idea. And we might even develop an opinion on it, and we might even have a strong belief on it. But that commitment phase is a whole nother phase where we've got to go beyond our emotions to where it matters whether or not we were successful the first time or if we're disappointed by it the first time. It had to be a point. It's become now a conviction for you. All right, and that's an amazing thing. So you get to the conviction level, and it's to the point, maybe you're not at this point yet, but almost like we're ready to die for the commitment. Like we would literally do anything. And so now it becomes a passion in our lives. I've seen this woman go from, I don't know if I can do this, to like, I am passionate about helping anybody I can. She's up here all times during the week. She came up to help the couple yesterday. Now we're involved in the Brown Bag Initiative. Tell us a little about that.
It's a program for senior citizens 60 or older. Every 2 weeks, the Middle Georgia Food Bank will bring you groceries over here. I have to divide them up between everyone I have an application for and go deliver it. Every 2 weeks, you get about 50 pounds every 2 weeks.
And that is free to them.
Absolutely free.
It costs nothing to the church. The food bank does that and says the only thing is y'all have to have about 40 to 50 people, and you've got to deliver it within 24 hours.
Yep.
So now she is preparing all month for a food pantry on the third Thursday and also getting 50 senior adults involved in this. And you become passionate about it because I'm like, look, don't overdo it. Don't overwhelm yourself. And she's like, no, this is a conviction now. Like, I have to do this. Now, tell me what you told me when you texted me to say thank you for letting you do it. And I was like, no, I'm thanking you. You remember what you told me about your...
It gave me a purpose in life.
Yeah, tell us about that.
You can make me cry.
Well, I'm trying. I guess I'm trying.
Okay, my husband passed away Christmas 2 years ago. And I have spent my entire life dedicated to taking care of my children and taking care of him. I did not have a life outside of them. After he passed, I got really miserable. And I was so unhappy. And I felt like there was no purpose in my life anymore at all, even though I had Maggie Jo and Daniel and Christy and Hunter. So I'd pray about it, and then I'd get all upset. And one night I just threw myself across my bed, and I said, okay, God, if you want to show me what my purpose is, then you better start showing me, because I feel like I'm useless. And next thing I know, this man's put me over here in a food pantry. And I know that is my purpose. I believe with all my heart the Lord has put me there to be a help to somebody else, because in my heart I love to help people. And I don't want anything in return for helping people. So,
And I mean, to me, that's like, for me, I was just like, dude, I need somebody to help open this food pantry. I didn't know anything about all this. You know, I had no idea you're hurting, struggling. You know, I knew that your husband had passed away, but I didn't know all that. I was just like, God put it on my heart months ago, let's provide a food pantry. And then lo and behold, y'all two, Squirrel and Hunter, show up with Miss Judy, and Miss Judy's like putting me to work somewhere. And I think some of the point that I'm trying to get at is sometimes making a commitment to following God is a little bit like a wild goose chase. We don't always know where it's going to lead us. And one of the things that's hard about commitments is, I mean, you think about it, the first of the year is not too far away. Everybody's going to make New Year's Eve resolution or New Year's resolutions, and they last February, March, maybe not even that long. But what I'm getting at is, it's easier for you to be all in now that you have committed to it and started doing it. And just to kind of give us an idea of what has happened. At first, we just thought we were going to have to do food drives and get everything together. And we got all of it in, and we got ready the first day, and we made the boxes, and we realized, all right, we have enough for how many people that first time?
we had 30 boxes ready.
We had enough for 30 people. And after 30 people, I don't know what we're doing next month. You know, and you're like, you want everything about most adults wants to go, okay, I got to have this solved and figured out. And then sometimes you just kind of have to go, God, if you don't do something here, this ain't going to work. And I think I remember telling her a story. I'm like, well, we're just going to pray for more stuff. You know, and inevitably in the next few days, we would get more and more stuff in. And then we were trying to do some grants, realized we don't have a 501c3. We can't get the grants. Didn't know what we were going to do. And the next thing I know, I hear about Middle Georgia Food Bank. And now Middle Georgia Food Bank is, for the normal food pantry, we can buy food for, 19 cents a pound? So we got 19 cents a pound. And that's helping, 30 people every month.
Probably more than that.
Maybe even more than that at that, and it's much better than we can do going and getting cans and all that. But then we're thinking, well, what about the senior adults who can't always get out and come up here and walk up those steps? And this is the South. Look, people are trained, when you're raised in the South, you don't ask for help. You don't take help. You don't do any of that stuff. And they're not going to ask, but they need it. And so the more we looked into doing that, the more it's like, okay, well, Middle Georgia's going to take care of this for us. And I hope you kind of read between the lines here. You have how many people signed up for it now?
45 right now.
So you have
For the
40
brown bag.
for the brown bag, 45 senior adults, okay?
And I didn't think we'd have any hard.
That means, okay, so let me kind of take it a step further. If we want to be evangelistic to senior adults, that's 45 who she's going to need help on that day somebody taking 5 or 6 and going to deliver it to people. You don't have to cold turkey knock on their door and say, I want to tell you about Jesus, or I want to tell you about my church. You don't even have to do any of that. You can just knock on the door. There's a little card in there that says, this is from First Baptist Zebulon. It says, we just wanted to show you the love of Christ in a very practical way. And if you want to take a minute to invite them to your Sunday school class, or you want to show them how to get YouTube on their TV or their phone to get our app to watch or whatever, it's built-in outreach just within that. And it's like, we ain't got to go figure it out. God's just bringing it to our doorstep. And so, and all of that started really from her going, I ain't got a clue what I'm doing, but I'll make a commitment to you, Pastor, to do it. Would you say it's easier now because you're seeing how God is involved than what it was? I mean, what's the difference, you think?
It's a world of difference. I sit and think, to begin with, what in the world am I going to do? There's not that much food here. But I'm telling you, one box goes out, 3 come back in. And the freezers, I mean, God is just providing every single thing we need over there.
So, just one question. Is it easier to stay committed now than it was before than to get committed or make that commitment?
It's easier now because there's no way I'm backing down now.
So there's one author that I was reading this week, and they said this: your commitment will mean something when you act on it for an extended period of time. When you become committed, you will notice something wonderful. The moment you make a commitment, you will find all kinds of wisdom,
Absolutely.
energy,
Yes.
and resources, right, at your disposal that weren't necessarily there before you committed.
Absolutely.
Right.
Before I started all this, I stayed tired all the time. And I told God, you're going to have to give me the strength, and I do it.
And so the author concludes it this way with, commitment opens up the floodgate to the resources you need. I love that statement. But they won't show up even a moment too soon. So not only do leaders commit to something, they stay committed to it, and that's when it gets easier and easier and easier because God begins to open up the floodgates. He says many people want to see everything in place before they get committed. Unfortunately, they will never act if they're waiting for perfect conditions. And we didn't have the perfect conditions and then say, hey, run this food pantry. It was like, we want to have a food pantry, but we don't have one right now, so we're just going to trust God. The author relates it to this story. They are half-hearted mountain climbers. And I'm going to tell you more about that story in a little bit. But they say others wait for a feeling before they act. They want to feel led to do something. And once again, they might be waiting for a while. We are much, much more likely to act our way into a feeling than we are to feel our way into an action. Get committed long enough, and eventually that commitment will become a conviction you would be willing to give your life for. And I think we begin to see that. And isn't that true that so often we're looking for God to lead me in a way? And I don't know that before I ever said anything about food pantry, God was leading you to come start a food pantry at First Baptist Zebulon. It just took some big fat bald-headed dummy going, hey, I need somebody to run this food pantry. You know, I got this idea, go for it.
Right.
And then everything begins to come into place the more you do it. And a lot of times, even with leaders, and we talk about leadership in here the way we do, because the people that come on Wednesday night, that's the core group. I mean, you guys are the ones that lead this church. You guys are the ones that, we can always count on. I know there are some others for sure, but definitely y'all. And so sometimes we wait out all these feelings about something, and really the whole time away, God was just waiting for us to make a commitment. And then once we make the commitment, then God brings all the other stuff in place once we get past it. So thank you. Appreciate it. Now you don't have to be scared about your microphone anymore.
Yes, I do.
She understands now what it's like to be under the hot lights up here every morning with everybody looking at you and like, what kind of dumb thing is the pastor going to say today and all this stuff. Okay.
I believe fully that God paves the road about a yard and
Mm.
We're doing 80. And that's where faith really comes in.
Yeah.
You get started when you don't have a clue what's
Yep.
going to happen, but God starts paving that road, and he gets ahead of us.
Yep. Look at Matthew chapter 16. I'm almost reminded of the old black and white movies where the train is on the railroad tracks and they're building the railroad tracks as the train is going. That's sometimes a kind of like what, there's a great book out there, I forget right off the top of my head who wrote it, and it's essentially, I believe it's called The Great Wild Goose Chase, and it talks about following God's will sometimes feels like a wild goose chase. You don't know where it's going. Last Sunday, or this past Sunday, we talked about Abraham when God called him to move. He didn't know where he was going. He didn't know what he was called to do. He was just doing and going and following. But Matthew chapter 16 speaks to the subject and is really the basis for this whole subject, where he says in 16:24, he says, if anybody wants to come after me, he's got to do these three things. Let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And so there were several times that Jesus clarified what it meant to be his disciples. Ultimately, I think what he really wanted us to know, that being his disciple was going to cost us something. Something financially, something personally, something in our time. He sums it up in Matthew 16:24, saying, if you're going to come out follow after me, you've got to deny yourself, which means it may not always be the stuff you want, and it may not always be your way. But God has something that you've got to be willing to do. You've got to take up your cross, and you've got to follow him. So the first thing that he tells us is that sometimes it's going to require sacrifice. That's what he means by denying himself. We're going to have to set aside occasionally our own pleasures and our own comforts and say, you're going to have to follow me and do that. And there are some things that you're going to be required to do when you follow Jesus that are going to sometimes make you uncomfortable. I mean, from just the rapport that I built with these two yesterday, I was not comfortable enough with driving them to Griffin by myself. So I get on the phone, I call Sandy Cheeves over here, and I say, hey, Sandy, where you at? I'm at my house. Don't worry about it. You're not in Zebulon. I'll get somebody else. No, I want to do it, whatever it is. I don't care. And I knew that if I said, hey, Sandy, these are the people I need to drive. I knew that number one, Sandy would do it, and he would be more than happy to do it. And I knew he would come prepared just in case things went south. And things would be all right. And he drove up and they said, oh, he looks like Santa Claus. And these two were really like, you're going to ride with us, right? Because I guess they were just uncomfortable with another stranger. And they saw Santa Claus. It helps put them at ease. But like Sandy didn't even ask me what I was going to make him do. I could have come over here and made him like move furniture all over the joint. He wouldn't have known. He was just said, yeah, I'll go, I'll do it. And that's one thing I like about Mr. Sandy is you're just willing to do whatever, whenever. And that's sort of that wild goose chase. And we might see it as giving up our will and our way when God calls us to do something. Like I had a plan before ministry that, I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to maybe be a coach. I just wanted to do something in sports. It's the only thing I cared about. And God's like, okay, well, I have this plan. And in part of following that plan is saying, okay, I'm going to sacrifice what I want to do what you want to do. And literally almost every year in the ministry, God has opened up doors for me to be involved in athletic programs as an outreach. And I'm going, it wasn't that God ever wanted to just do away with my likes and my comforts and my things. He just wanted to know, was I willing to give it up to follow him? And now he's allowed me to use those. I had a big time this year. I've been reading through a book called Habitudes that I think if you guys have a minute, you ought to pick up one of those. And I've been going for the last whole football season. Look, I know they're like 0-100 at Pike County High School. And honestly, y'all, it's hard to watch their football games. It's so boring. But getting to go over on Monday afternoons and have 75 football players intently zoned in to what you're about to say And I get a round of applause at the end of every one. And I don't always get that here on Sundays, but they're into it. And you can talk to football players in a way that I can't talk to all of y'all sometimes. Nothing inappropriate, obviously, but there's some different illustrations that we talk about. And I'm going, I get to be involved at Pike County High School talking with athletes and football players. And that's all I wanted to do before God says, will you give it all up for me? And I said, okay, it took a while. I'm not lying to y'all. I wasn't like, yeah, God, I'll do it right now. Let's go. It took a few years before I finally surrendered and said, God, whatever you want. That took a minute. But I look back now and going, I got to coach a state championship team. I got to be the chaplain for several teams that won a state championship. I got to be chaplain for these guys in a brand new town. And I'm like, you're telling me God doesn't have a plan? And God doesn't have a purpose? He just often wants to know, are you really willing to give it up for him? Stephen Curtis Chapman has a song, Willing to Abandon It All for the Sake of the Call. And so that's the sacrifice that Jesus is talking about in Matthew. And then there's purpose. And that is why God, it's finding why God, that's taking up your cross. What is your purpose? She figured out what the purpose for these years in her life is. And she's been able to find that by simply saying to God, okay, whatever, I'll do it. Let's go and let's just start, and then we're going to begin to see things. And so we begin to take up our cross, we figure out our purpose, and then that following me, y'all be honest, it takes a lot of determination to follow Jesus sometimes, because sometimes it ain't easy. And there's a lot of people in this church that I have sat with in just 1 year, and I told them I know this is a hard time in your life, but you will move. You may not ever get over it, but you will move past it. You will find purpose. And that's so hard to believe sometimes. And it's so hard to trust in. But that's part of that determination where I am determined that I am going to follow Jesus and also follow through on my decisions until they are complete. I am going to do what God called me to do, and I'm going to trust him no matter what it takes. That's hard to do. But what we've learned through leadership tonight, through your example, through other people's examples, is you make that commitment. You make that determination, and God begins to take all the steps for you. It's oftentimes that first real hard step. It's the reason why on Sunday mornings most people don't want to step out and walk an aisle here, because that first step scares them to death. And that's the way it is when it's following Christ. Sometimes that first step is so scary to say, God, how am I going to provide for this? How am I going to sustain this? How am I going to staff this? How am I going to do any of these things? Is so often so difficult that we never make the commitment to it because we can't figure it all out. And the crazy thing about Jesus is that he comes along and he just says, come follow me. He doesn't tell you to have it all figured out. He doesn't say, hey, take a month, get all your stuff together, get all your ducks in a row, come follow me. He just says, start following me. And as you follow me, everything's going to unfold, and you're going to see it, and you're going to begin to live it. Y'all ever heard of Joan of Arc? I'm a history fan, so obviously I've watched a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff about her. Joan of Arc knew her mission in life by the time she was 15 years old. At 17, she led 3,000 French knights in battle. On one occasion, she told a military general, quote, I will lead the way over the wall. And the general replies, not a man will follow you. And you know what she said? I won't be looking back to see if they follow me. And that's an impressive thing to think. I mean, a 17-year-old girl doing what she did. At 19, she was burned alive because she would not recant on her commitment to France. The British gave her a chance to regain her liberty if she would only change her allegiance. She wouldn't. In choosing to die at the stake, she was said to say, everyone gives their life for what they believe. Sometimes people believe in little or nothing, and yet they give their life to that little or nothing. One life is all we have, and we live it, and then it's gone. But to give up what you are to live without belief is more terrible than dying. even more terrible than dying young. That's pretty impressive to have that idea, which, let's take it down a minute. Y'all know what the difference between involvement and commitment is? Just think about a pig and a chicken. All right? After eating a ham and egg breakfast, the chicken was involved, the pig was committed. That's a whole different sort of ball game. And so I'm looking at this and going, that tells us oftentimes we are asked to be committed, but we're so afraid to get everything figured out first. Oftentimes you're just going to have to trust the Lord and say, I'll commit to you and move forward. I love this story, and I'll kind of conclude with this. It's about the half-hearted mountain climber is what it's called. There's a famous mountain climbing resort in the Swiss Alps that cater to groups who want to ascend this beautiful mountain. It's an 8-hour trek to the top. The climb builds camaraderie as groups help each other reach the summit. In the morning, climbers are usually very passionate and can hardly wait to begin. Approximately halfway up the mountain, there's an alpine restaurant, a sort of halfway house. As the hikers reach it, most of them stop for a meal, hot chocolate, and to warm themselves by a fire. After an hour, less than half of them continue up the mountain. Inside, it's so warm, cozy, and comfortable. For most folks, it's too hard to go back outside and keep climbing. They become satisfied with how far they've come. In a few hours, however, they wander over to the large picture window to see those who continued climbing returning after reaching the top of the mountain. And the atmosphere in the room goes from laughter and happiness to one of melancholy. Despair sets in as they question their decision to forfeit the rest of the climb. They realize they've exchanged excellence for mediocrity. And in the story, they ask this question: did you know that the term mediocre literally means middle of the rock? Middle of the rock. Originally, mediocre was a rock climbing term to describe those who set a goal to reach the top and somehow stopped halfway up. They were involved, but they were not committed. But there's no such thing as a half-hearted mountain climber. No one accidentally climbs to the top of a mountain. You must be purposeful and you must be committed. Commitment goes with the territory. And then in this article, he concludes by saying this: and you must be purposeful and committed. Being a successful person, much less a good leader, we must be committed. Says that real leaders possess commitment. They can't be involved without being committed. The rest of the world may enjoy involvement without commitment, but emerging leaders cannot. They cannot be involved without being committed. And that is the story of that half-hearted mountain climber. And I can tell you, I've climbed a couple of mountains, nothing like this one, but I can remember sitting down with friends of mine with a backpack and supplies all over the room, and we planned it down to a half an ounce. You may take a plastic fork with you on the mountain, but you will break the plastic fork in half to save weight. And you go, what's the difference in a full plastic fork or a half plastic fork? Well, when you're walking 10 miles a day, you will tell. You will be able to figure that out. We planned out routes. We prepared it all the way. But there was no way to accidentally stumble into climbing to the top of that mountain. You're either purposeful and committed or you are not making it. And I think one of the things that Jesus is looking for, according to Matthew chapter 16, is he's just looking for people who don't necessarily just want to be involved in being his disciple, but is committed to being his disciple. And I get it. Everybody has to start somewhere. For some people, it's just getting the idea of Jesus in front of them. For some people, it's just getting them to be in the door. But oftentimes, Jesus looks at us as leaders and says, is this just a big involvement you have? Is this your country club that you are involved in? Or are you committed to whatever it takes? And oftentimes, there have been times in my life where I just sometimes feel led by the Lord to just say, God, I just want to remind you, I'm all in. Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to go, whatever you want us to do, I'm all in. And then I come here, and one of the first things I'm asked to do by the association is go to Pennsylvania, and I have never flown in my whole life. And I was like, okay, I've been telling everybody that it's really easy to share your faith. It's really not that scary to ask people about their relationship with the Lord, but I won't get on a plane and go to Pennsylvania. And y'all, I wrestled with that for weeks. And I know that's a stupid example of commitment and involved. But I mean, I was just like, one day I was like, yes, I'm going to book the flight. And then I'd get to the point of clicking the button and wouldn't click the button. And I'd come up with some excuse. And I was never really scared of flying. I'd just never done it before. And some folks go, well, Matt, I've never shared my faith with anybody before. I've never prayed for anybody before. I've never just gone out on a limb to help people before. And I'm just like, well, yeah, it's easy to do. All you got to do is this. And then there are other people who's like, dude, I've flown 1,000 times. All you got to do is just get on a plane and rest. But it was hard. And it was the difference. Are you going to be involved or committed? Are you involved in sharing the faith, or are you committed to sharing the faith? Are you involved in missions, or are you committed to missions? And finally, after about, 2.5 months, it's getting close to the time for the trip, and it's like time to put up or shut up. I finally just said, well, it was late one night, and I guess my guards were down, and I was like, clicked it. I was like, I did it. And then I'm like, crap, now I got to get on this plane, and got to figure all this out. I don't know. Like, I hate roller coasters. Is this going to be like a roller coaster? I don't know. And I'm just, all this stuff. But, man, and then you realize when you do it, like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I can get to Pennsylvania in an hour and a half. You're going to drive, going to take you 10 hours. I get on the plane. And once you go fully committed to Jesus, and the first time you share your faith with somebody, you realize, man, this ain't all that hard. It's actually very, very rewarding. And so it's just a difference between, am I willing to go all the way? And I think that's what the Lord is looking for us as leaders to do. Father, tonight we thank you so much that we can look at the book and it can give us examples for our life. It can prepare us. It can get us ready. But God, I'm also thankful that when we say we're into this and when we say we want to help people, that God, that you always seem to some way put us on the spot and say, prove it. And so, God, I am thankful for opportunities to prove it. And I just pray, God, you continue to give us many more. We ask it in your name. Amen. All right, you got 6 minutes for choir practice.